Vegas is favoring BYU this weekend, but not by much. What does it mean?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. Joining me, as always, is my good friend, Andrew Glukov, an expert on everything UCF, and hopefully an expert on this spread. Andrew, Vegas thinks this is a pick'em between the undefeated BYU Cougars and the UCF Knights. What say you, sir?
Well, first,
this isn't a lot.
First, let me say flattery will get you everywhere, but it won't get you everything. Here's truth. BYU is not the same team that Iowa State was. Iowa State, is top to bottom a much better rounded team offensively, defensively. BYU, they could put some points up on the board, but they've also given up a lot of points to competition they really shouldn't have. They gave up 28 points in a one-score victory over Baylor. They gave up 35 points in a wild win this past week over Oklahoma State. Sure, they're 11th in the AP, but some are thinking that maybe fool's gold as opposed to Iowa State. Plus, this is also a little bit of hindsight in play. No one expected UCF to put Iowa State on the ropes. They're now at home. And it sounds like the team is getting a little more stable.
Look, I hear you on their schedule because looking there, I mean, Kansas State is sitting out there as maybe their biggest win of the season. But outside of that, there's not, I mean, you're Southern Illinois, SMU, Wyoming, Baylor, Arizona, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's having a really tough season, and it's at home. It's at home for them, right? Like, no, I'm sorry, they're at UCF. So
it's in Orlando. It's in Orlando.
It's in Orlando. So, does that factor? Is home field advantage factor in here for the Knights?
Well, I mean, general rule of thumb is on betting spreads, give 3 points to the home team. So what you're trying to say is BYU is a 5-point favorite, still a one-score game, and that's close. And they have a couple of top 25 wins. You talk about SMU. SMU's ranked. They're 22nd in the AP poll. Kansas State 16th. So I mean, they got a couple of legit wins under their belt, though. The Kansas State one was just an absolute beatdown, and no one really saw that one coming. But the SMU game was another really close one on the road. Here's the thing. Baylor, they struggled on the road. Now, Oklahoma State, they struggled at home, but, their road results are not nearly as impressive as their home results for the most part this season. I think that's playing into the spread.
Yeah. I think whenever I see a game like this on the schedule, that's pretty much just flip a coin and see who wins. I'm always interested because right now, this tells me that Vegas still thinks that this is a pretty good UCF team, despite some of the struggles that we talked about yesterday that they've had passing through the air. They just named Jacurri Brown the starter for the rest of the year. We'll talk about that later. But Vegas still thinks the Knights have a chance to pull this one out. And I do too. Similar to last week, I felt like they should have beaten Iowa State.
And absolutely.
Right in there, right? I think I'm going to be picking them again this week. I'm going to wait till later in the week when we do our other segment before I make my official pick because I'm going to give a score. But I like UCF's chances in this one.
My top 3 running backs that I wrote this preseason, RJ Harvey was number 3, Taj Brooks, Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon ripped up the BYU defense. They got shredded. Well, now you got RJ Harvey, who's one of those top 3 running backs for a reason. And I think that's part of it is because UCF such a run-based team. They found a bit of that magic again in that first half against Iowa State. There's no reason why they can't find that magic again in the confines of the bounce house against BYU. And these two teams have played each other a couple times. Each game has always been close. The first one was a one-possession win in Utah. The second one was a one-possession win in Orlando, and now we have this one. I don't count the bowl game. That was an abs. We don't talk about it. That's like Highlander 2. We don't talk about the bowl game where BYU during the COVID year behind Zach Wilson absolutely carved up the Knights. We don't talk about that game, but this is regular season where it really counts. And so you have these two regular season games where they've split over the years. Now you got BYU coming in hot, but maybe not in the right places. Matchup wise with the UCF Knights. I like how UCF with the run game plays up well against BYU's run defense, and the other side is UCF's defense. I think is actually well set up to be able to handle against BYU because Jake Retzlaff is the offense.
Yeah,
BYU. He's their top quarterback. He's their top running back. I mean, he's everything. So, I mean, you got to key in on him. I think you may be able to keep him in check.
That's where I was going next. Retzlaff, last week we talked about how UCF could limit Rocco Becht. He had a terrible first half and then went nuts with Jalen Noel in the second half on the UCF defense. Retzlaff is a pretty good deep ball passer. So far on the years of passes of 20 or more, he's 45%, pretty close to 50%, and he's a really good deep ball passer. How does UCF limit Retzlaff throwing the ball down the field? I think the Knights have struggled with giving up big plays in critical moments this season.
Well, when you look at his last 3 games, 56% completion rate. 56% completion rate. And then last week against Oklahoma State, 50%.
Yeah.
That as you and I have said, 60% is kind of the baseline. You got to get 60% of your passes if you really want to win.
Let me add some context here. His adjusted is 72, 16 drops on the season from the BYU receiving core.
Well, I mean, if your receiving core can't hold it on to the ball, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. At the end of the day. You got to catch the ball. He may be putting it in the right place, but if they're not making plays, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still an incomplete pass.
Yeah. This is a fascinating matchup here with Retzlaff because certainly the offensive line seems to be giving him a decent amount of time to throw the ball, but mistakes are being made by their wide receivers. He's got 7 interceptions on the season. You can turn this quarterback over if you play things right. Look, they're in play action with him about 31% of their plays. So UCF, I think, will have their hands full with Retzlaff in some ways, but certainly he's not unstoppable. Like you said, he's their whole offense. So is it stop him, stop BYU?
Yeah, well, the thing is, UCF in the last couple of games have been able to make some turnovers happen. They got a couple picks last week. Or this past game where they essentially 2 pick sixes. Let's call it essentially 2. And then they had a couple of interceptions against Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati, who's a really good quarterback too. They even had a pick on Shedeur Sanders, which has been very difficult to pull off. This is a defensive backfield that can make plays. They can make things happen. It really comes down to, can the pass rush cause enough disruption that these passes can be intercepted, because the defensive backs can do their job if they're given a little bit of help.
Yeah, I agree. Look, there's a quarterback on the other side of the field that has been given a vote of confidence by his head coach. We're going to talk about what he has to do right after a quick word from our sponsors. This segment of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Roy. Hey, UCF fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, Roy has pulled over $20,000 to support players. Micro deposits lead to massive change with the Roy app. You can direct your support to the athletes that you love, ensuring that all funds go to a specific player. This is a creative way that they've come up with, Andrew, to fund name, image, and likeness to the players that you love directly. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. Amazing. You get your money back. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download the Roy app, create an account, and enter the referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Roy_return on you for more info. That's Roy_return on you for more info. Andrew, Jacurri Brown has gotten the job for the rest of the season.
He's Gus the Malzahn guy.
Has seen what he needs to see to say that they're going to roll with Jacurri. Look, EJ Colson got a slim chance to show that he could be the quarterback this season. They've decided to roll with the transfer quarterback here. You know, what do you think about this decision to roll with Jacurri? I like it. I think that he's got to grow up in the passing game, but when you look at what he was able to do on the ground, along with R.J. Harvey, I think this is the right decision for UCF.
Oh, absolutely. And we talked about this, that and we expected Brown to be the guy, before, the press conference solidified it. There's no doubt about it, because KJ Jefferson's time is done. Obviously that didn't work. That experiment, just wipe your hands free, move on, lick the wounds, get back up. EJ Colson, true freshman, he looks the part. Dylan Risk, not ready for this level of play. So Jacurri Brown, that he's what you got. So at this point, put all the confidence behind him, give him all the first team reps. He's still working on that chemistry. His deep throws were affected by that. Aside from the fact that he was playing against the then number 5 pass defense in the country. Now they're up to 3rd. They're pretty good. Jacurri Brown is not the only quarterback that Iowa State's pass defense has humiliated. Look what he did against Cincinnati, who's not as good of a pass defense. BYU, not as good of a pass defense. He's going to have more opportunities to do some damage. And if you look at his numbers, if you look at strictly the short and middle thirds, they're not bad.
Yeah, it's the deep ball that he struggled with.
Yeah, not bad at all. 61.5% on the middle third. That's not bad. 72, a little low on the short, but you know what? That's not terrible. There's still work that can be done, and he's able to get that done. If they just remove the deep ball, just kind of take it out of the system at this point, because the chemistry is not there yet. You need that touch, that timing, to match with the receiver's stride. It's not there yet. So focus on the things you can do. The short 0 through 9 yards, the medium, the 10 through 19. UCF has players like Randy Pittman and Kobe Hudson who are really good at yards after catch, especially Pittman.
Yeah.
So you know what? Get him in stride in that middle third and let him do the rest. And then you start getting into that. Instead of throwing it in the deep third, you'll just get a deep third quality gain out of it. That's what I would do. Just focus on those parts. Because I remember when Dylan Gabriel was starting at UCF in 2019, he was the opposite. He had incredible deep touch, but he couldn't hit the short stuff. He would get happy feet, and he just would struggle with that. So they threw the ball longer and let it stretch the field. Well, work with what you got. Brown needs a little more seasoning and a little more chemistry build. So shorten the field a little bit. Use that run game to open up the short pass. And if you can get 4 or 5 yards every single play, you're going to get first downs. You're going to move the chains. That's all you need. You don't have to have the big home run ball.
Yeah.
Be methodical. There's nothing wrong with it as long as you stay on the field, because Iowa State was on 22.5 minutes versus 7.5 in the second half. I mean, they absolutely dominated UCF in the second half time of possession. So if you can flip the script a little bit, or even just balance it out a little bit more, that would at least keep BYU from putting more points on the board.
Yeah, look, the short passing game requires precision and accuracy, and I think that's what he's going to be looking for from his quarterback on Saturday. Can he be precise? Can he put the ball in the right spots and protect the football over the middle of the field? You mentioned, he missed on the deep ball, but he hit on some of those intermediate passes from 10 to 20 yards out. As a matter of fact, he took 5 shots. He hit on 3 of them, and he had a drop in there. So it's going to be one of those things for him where if he can show the efficiency, because I don't know how much volume Malzahn's going to give him in this game. I think he only threw the ball 20 times last Saturday. This Saturday, can you get him maybe 25 to 28 throws in the game? If he can hit the deep ball, hit a couple deep balls, and they get some flow going on offense. You just don't want to be easier to defend. You don't want to make yourself one-dimensional and be a one-dimensional offense that they have to defend. Otherwise, it's just load the box and dare you to throw the ball.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how the dynamics of the game goes. Is if they can't score early and they fall behind, then obviously they're going to have to rely more on the pass. And that we've seen that in prior games, especially against like TCU, where KJ Jefferson just had to throw the ball a lot to embrace a 3-touchdown deficit. UCF's not built for that. They need to score early and keep close enough where they don't have to abandon the run. Like against Iowa State, they didn't have to abandon the run. Iowa State made adjustments and they couldn't figure it out. And the run game just stopped. But because the passing game was so outmatched by the pass defense of Iowa State, they couldn't do anything. I don't think they're going to have that same problem with BYU. Their defense isn't as, standoutish, for lack of a better term. I think they'll be able to maintain a semblance of balance. It really comes back to, can they put points on the board early and set the pace?
Look, we're going to talk about we're going to play a little game of over under before we get out of here, but not before another quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, Andrew, America's #1 sportsbook. We mentioned at the top of the broadcast, it is a 2-point spread on Saturday. So whether you're taking the points or you're taking BYU or UCF straight up, FanDuel is the place that you want to do it. Remind us really quickly, are you taking UCF and the points, or what are you doing here?
Well, I mean, I'm still not sold yet. I've got BYU covering this one. The spread is so small.
So you got BYU winning essentially.
I got BYU winning by more than a field goal.
Oh man.
And I like to point out, because I want to say I told you so. Last week, I correctly picked Iowa State, but not by the spread. So Iowa State straight up, UCF by the spread. Gotcha.
Well, whether you agree with Andrew or not, go check out our friends at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Andrew, before we get out of here, over under 200 yards through the air for Jacurri Brown on Saturday.
I'm going to go slightly under on that. I think he'll be in the 160s, 170s. I don't think they're going to rely too much on the passing game, but he's going to be more successful than he was this time. And I think that yardage is going to be partially because of lack of utilization. I don't think they're going to rely so much on the passing game. He had just over 200 against Cincinnati. And that was a game they were playing from behind for the majority of the game and tied it up eventually, but then slipped away. And I think the running game is going to find itself again enough that they're going to rely on it. And Jacurri Brown, let him tuck it and run. Do first read, second read, tuck and go. And he's proven he's got wheels. Yeah,
I see. I'm picking the over here. I'm opposite of you again.
Such a contrarian.
I see them making a concerted effort to get Kobe Hudson involved in this ball game a little bit more than last week. He's a weapon. You have to use him. And I think that Jacurri connects on a couple of those deep balls to get him there. So maybe a big pass or two, plus the normal production. Obviously, he only had 62 yards last week, but I think that production will go up. You think it'll go up as well, too. We're not far off, but I think he clears the 200 yard mark. Andrew, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Well, you can catch me on Twitter /X at StatBoyDrew, and my work on The Last Word on college football, part of the Last Word on Sports family.
Guys, thank you for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12, the podcast. Drake Toll leads the conversation in conference realignment news and holds no punches when it comes to covering every team in the Big 12. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're out, but we'll be back tomorrow with more great content on Locked On UCF.